to hear myself giggling through the last video. And I was like, oh gosh, I need to put a lid on it.
Okay. And we are on the air once more. Ugh. And where are we? Oh, okay. We're right here.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting. Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press you are in the meeting now. You are the first participant. Please stand by.
Okay. Hurrah for participation. He said, not knowing what else to say. All right, so today we are going to go through chapter 9, reducing project duration. And I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, this is the wrong presentation. What happened?
Well, I think you meant to go over 8:11 because in my note it says they go over class next Tuesday, 10/6 on exercise 8:11.
Okay, well, what a mistake on my part. All right, there we go. All right, going over 8:11. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Where is my Zoom? There you go. All right, so 8:11, we have the classic I say classic, but all right, so we are given a setup here, which I will replicate for exercise 8:11 in case anyone has missed that crucial piece of information. Okay. All right, so our network looks like this. Of course, we start at time 0. Our activity is 1. That lasts for 2 units. Activity 2 lasts for 3 time units. Activity 3 lasts for 2 time units. Activity 4 lasts for 4 time units. Activity 5 lasts for 5 time units, and it's starting to look suspicious. Activity 6 lasts for 2 time units, and activity 7 lasts for 1 time unit. All right, and let's see, this is design prototype. All right, I did not want to do that. Activity 2 is build prototype. Activity 3 is order parts. Activity 4 is prepare production. Activity 5 is prepare marketing. 6 is assemble and test. And 7 is launch. Okay, so whether this is a rocket or just an ordinary activity, we're not really told. All right, we do need to put our arrows in, so an arrow from design prototype to build prototype. An arrow goes from build prototype to order parts, from build prototype to prepare production, and from build prototype to prepare marketing. An arrow goes from order parts to assemble and test, from prepare production to assemble and test, from assemble and test to launch, and finally an arrow goes from prepare marketing to launch. All right, so now we have our network node diagram. So we need to do the forward pass. So our early start for activity 1 is 0. So our early finish is 0 plus our duration of 2, which means that our early start for build the prototype is also 2, and that our early finish is our early start plus our duration. All right, so that duration, H6, goes to the early start for all of our next three activities, 3, 4, and 5, order parts, prepare production, and prepare marketing. Okay, so far so well. Order parts are early finish equals early start plus duration. Early finish for prepare production is our early start plus duration. And for prepare marketing is our early start plus our duration. How do we know what our early start is for assemble and test?
Pick the highest.
I'm sorry, I thought you said Italian, and that makes no sense in this context.
Pick the highest early finish, the highest number.
Exactly, so it's the higher number of 7 or 9. I think we all know that's gonna be 9.
Or 10.
Well, except there's no arrow going there. I didn't change the color of my arrows.
Oh, okay.
So, so it's hard to see them is my guess. Here, I'll change it just for this one. Oh yeah, those arrows are super hard to see. Let's try an experiment. All right, now the arrows are more visible. All right, so 10 would have been correct, except that that arrow didn't go there. All right, so once again, we look at this and we say our early finish equals our early start plus our duration for assemble and test. Now, for launch, it's equal to the maximum number between prepare marketing and assemble and test. Of course, we know what that is. And so our early finish for the project is our early start plus the duration of the launch. We know that that means that that is also our early finish time, and therefore equal to early finish or late finish minus duration, which is W10. All right, so for both assemble and test, and for prepare marketing, our late finish time is the late start time for launch. Our late start time is going to be equal to our late finish time minus our duration. That means that for, what is that, Q8. So our late finish times for both order parts and prepare production will be equal to our late start time for assemble and test. Bloody hell. So our late start time for order parts is our late finish minus our duration, and for prepare production, again, is equal, our late start time is equal to late finish minus, what is that, 8. And here for prepare marketing, equal to our late finish minus all right, so continuing on backwards, we know that our late finish for build prototype equals the minimum number of our late start for order parts, late start for prepare production, and late start for prepare marketing. Our late start for build the prototype is our late finish minus our duration, and even the weariest river winds somewhere safe to the sea. So our late start time, our late finish time equals our late start time for the next activity, and our late start time, all right, B8. All right. Obviously from here, it's pretty easy to figure out the slack times, not that we have many. All right, there's a slack time. There's no slack time. There's a tiny bit of slack time. All right, so you can see the way they've set up this project, there is just not much slack built into the system, back and forth. We can get rid of that now. All right, so you'll notice then that we have design the prototype equals build the prototype equals order parts equals prepare production equals prepare marketing equals assemble and test, and finally equals launch. So, one, oh, hey, what happened? All right, you'll notice they've got a little grid, assuming that you're looking at 289, of when costs are expected to drop. So these are costs in thousands of dollars. In week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. And I could have put, I guess, to try and duplicate more closely. All right, so they are defining our time periods as being per week in the thousands of dollars. So designing the prototype has money dropping in week 1 and week 2. Build the prototype has money dropping in weeks 1, 2, and 3. Ordering the parts in weeks 1 and 2. Preparing production in week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4. And preparing marketing in week 1, week 2, none in week 3, but week 4 and week 5. Assemble and test in weeks 1 and 2, and launch in week 1. All right, so here to give a better view, I will go ahead and put in a grid. Now, I'll go ahead and prepare our next exciting situation, which is our budget 1, 2, and I want to go out to 13 because they have. We need a total. Oh, and damn it, I need another space here. For budget. And let me think, what do we do to review, add-ins, oh death, where's thy sting? I'm just gonna go down. All right, so 24, 30, 10, 64, 30, 36, 12, and the total is 206, which it refuses to recognize. All right, so I'll make that a little wider so we can see the 206. All right, and then we have cumulative. That's not how you spell cumulative. All right, there you go. All right, so what we have to do is now harmonize our budget with our schedule here. All right, so is that all we have to do? Okay, complete the baseline budget form for, all right. Well, we know that designing the prototype happens in week 1 and week 2, no matter what. All right, so we can go ahead and say equals G14 equals G15. Oh, what happened? Equals, oh, okay, I went the wrong direction. What a mistake on my part. Building the prototype is the thing that happens in weeks 3, 4, and 5. So therefore, equals and equals that. Right? Okay. Just when it gets exciting, you're leaving.
I'm not leaving.
Oh, okay. What a mistake on my part. All right. Now we have to ask, how are we going to do this? Obviously, prepare production has to be spent right now, because there is no slack. But ordering parts, we could put off for 2 weeks. We've got 2 weeks worth of slack, right? So we could put that here. And we've got 1 week slack for prepare marketing. So we could go equals all right, so assemble and test has to start happening in week 9. So equals G19, put a $sign there. Yes, ma'am.
So, you did prepare production because it had no slack time.
Right.
So how did you get, how did you get to, why did you put it at 6?
Why did I put it at 6?
Yeah.
Because it has to start at 6, doesn't it? Oh, no, it has to start at 5. Oh, death, where's thy sting?
Okay, so,
Oh, all right, so that also means that order parts has to start at 7 and prepare marketing has to start at
6.
6, right. All right, and assemble and test has to start at 9. All right, we're back on track. All right, and launch has to start at 11. All right, so now we want to put together what is our cumulative budget. All right, well, for the first period, it's super easy. Equals summation of all of these, although only one of them actually has anything in it.
all the way down to total or all the way to launch?
You're right, all the way to launch. What a mistake on my part. Thank you for correcting me there, sister. All right. Now, it gets a little bit trickier after that, because it's going to be, we want the cumulative total, so that means equal to the previous week plus the summation of the totals spent in week 2. Right? Really, there's only one area where there's any money spent, but the method of my madness will become clear here in a second. Because now, all I'm going to do is pull over that calculation Okay, so now we have a time-phased budget. For the project. Now guys, when I do stuff here on Excel, if you don't understand what I've done, you need to say, hey, bald guy, how did you do that? Or something of this nature. Because I'm actually expecting you to show up with a knowledge of Excel.
So, what about the total? Do we just sum all that and not accumulative? So, 1 and 2 would be 12, 3, 4, 5, and then when it gets to 5, it would be 26?
Well, I mean, I could
Do you,
think of this as total remaining, and here I could go equals my total minus
minus,
the sum of money spent on all of these. Of course, already I'm getting into a situation here, right?
yeah,
And then just pull that one over. If I'm super worried about if I'm kind of a suspenders and a belt guy, which I am actually, then I check my numbers by doing the reverse with the total.
and 0 would always be at the end.
And in that case, yes, 0 would be at the end, and the cumulative would be that I've spent the entire
title.
total budget.
Okay, so, what if it's not 0? What if 0 comes way before the end? Does that mean you've spent more?
Yes, that would seem to indicate that you've already spent all of your budget.
So what happens then? You just
Well,
stop.
it depends
The
on
project
how
just stops.
far under 0 you are.
And then you go into a negative.
Well, if we're talking millions of dollars and you're $1,000 in the hole, they may not care too much. But if we're talking thousands of dollars like we are here, and you're $10,000 in the hole, could be a pretty serious situation. But look, this is just the phased baseline budget. So it's, if your numbers come out wrong here, you've made a miscalculation.
Somewhere.
If in real life, when you're executing the project, you start coming out with different numbers, that is not going to be surprising. You just don't want to be very far off. Uh-oh. I'm giving Rebecca a headache here with all this talk of losing money. Her training is in accounting, and she's just very upset over the whole idea. Right, so at this point, we're doing our baseline budget. If it comes out wrong on one or the other, then we've made an arithmetic error somewhere. If when we're doing the project it comes out wrong, that's more to be expected, but as long as we're not too far off, we're probably okay. And in fact, if we have money left over, we're usually really okay.
Okay.
Right, when I told you all about the project that I managed where we came within $4.36 of spending all the money.
Wow.
In that case, that was a very good thing because the government had allotted us this much money. I think it was 1.42 million for this project, right? Well, when the government allots a certain amount of money, you want to get as close to that zero as you can possibly get without going over, right? So we were just pretty damn proud of ourselves that we got down to 436.
Wow, that's pretty good.
If, on the other hand, we had spent 436 too much, my boss probably would have taken it out of his pocket and stuck it in there so we'd come out at zero.
Yeah.
Because, well, it kind of depends. That was working for the Army. When I worked for the Air Force, we had a deal where they wanted me to work an extra week, right? And I said, boy, an extra week of my salary, that's gonna be expensive, right? And so I go to my boss on the project, and I'm like, are you sure you can afford that? And he's like, it's only a week of your salary. It's nothing. So how people think about the amount of money differs depending on where you are. And what kind of goals you're looking at and so on. You know, some people are what we call pinche gringos. You know, they're squeezing the nickel until Jefferson is crying. And other people are like, oh, yeah, you know, here's 20 bucks, tip that boy.
So they both have their goods and bads about them, about each side.
Well, part of it depends on the culture of the organization, right? We spent a lot of time talking about culture earlier in this class. And in some organizations, it's like they're not afraid to spend money as long as it's going to help the organization and make more money and or make more money in the long term. Other organizations, oh my God, you go over 10 bucks, you hear about it for years. You know, so part of it is the company culture. Although always be wary when people start saying, well, you got to spend money to make money. That's usually a bunch of people that have no concept what they're doing.
So I have a question for you, and it may not be, well, I think it's related to. So when they say you have this much money to spend by this date,
Right.
so the project manager tries to spend all that money by a certain date, because when that date comes up, whatever is left in that pot, they have to give it back.
Right. That is a mistake that companies make when they're budgeting. Look at it this way. If you are running a business and you've got a department that got $1 million in their budget, and they end up spending only $900,000, but not only did they get everything done, they did it in grand style. They really made you look good. Are you gonna say, no, next year you get less money? I might say, you know what? We're gonna take that 100,000 and we're gonna put it with $1 million for next year, and I want you guys to do this and that and the other thing too, besides all the stuff you've been doing. Or they might say, look, the guy before us didn't know how to spend money. He was an idiot. I took over here. We didn't have to spend this much money. If we're gonna do the same job next year, give us 950,000, not $1 million.
Oh, okay.
Right, so the thing is, a lot of times people get hung up on the numbers, right? Oh, you didn't spend all your budget, well, we're taking that back. We're putting that in the pot. Well, look at the job they did, the problems they had, how much good they did the company. Right, because that $100,000 they saved you there may save your ass on another project over here where they had poor management and they're short $75,000.
Okay.
So, you know, these are just some of the considerations that we end up with when we're doing project managing. Or when we're doing managing of any kind.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's look at project management. All right, that's the 6th edition. Oh, that's because I missed curses foiled. All right, you may have noticed I was so busy today that I did not assign your homework for this class yet,
Oh.
for this week. But that day is coming. One thing I need y'all to be aware of, I'm posting quizzes for every Thursday. And the quiz is only open on Thursday. So be sure you're checking Moodle and downloading the question for the quiz and writing up something and sending it to me.
Talking about due dates, so when I looked at the due date for the past week's homework, I noticed it was due by midnight last night.
I always want homework to be due 1 week later, because I assign homework every week,
Yeah.
right? You don't want to get in the situation where, oh, now I've got 2 weeks homework I've got to get done, etc. But I will give you an extra week.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
In fact, at times, people come and plead and beg, and rather than have them get my shoes all wet from crying on me, I usually tell them, all right already. Just
Twisted my arm, okay. Because I'm having issues with one of the exercises.
Okay, well, we've done an example of every kind of exercise now. Okay, so usually when that happens, I say, you know what, you get a week from when we've done the example of everything. So I guess I've got no way to hold your feet to the fire at all. All right, so chapter 9 is about reducing project duration, right? We've said previously in this class that we don't want to reduce project duration, but sometimes you got it. All right, so we might have different reasons we want to crash a project or reduce the duration. We've got some different options of how we shorten an activity, assuming resources aren't constrained. We have different ways of identifying what those options are when the resources are constrained. We're going to work on how do we determine an optimum cost time in a project network. Understand what the risks are when we compress the time on a project. And see what are our different options for reducing costs of a project when we're trying to shorten the duration. Again, ordinarily, we want to set up the project, we want to let it run, but there might be reasons that we just cannot put up with the original duration, right? The company might come to us and say, you know what, we gave you until July 4th weekend to have this done. Well, now we need it done on June 6th. And that's a hard deadline. We can't get around that. Right, so that is always a possibility. So our rationale for reducing, the options we have for accelerating, how we build a cost duration graph, again, how do we construct that, and what are some of the practical considerations. What if it's not cost and it's not time, but we have an issue? All right, so the baseline consideration when we're talking about reducing project duration is the old time is money saying. Right? We're told this all the time. I have no doubt y'all have had finance class where you had to calculate the time value of money. Right? Because what I can say, if I can get it out here, what I can say about this dollar that will always be true is that it won't be worth the same tomorrow that it is today. It might be worth more, although that's not the way to bet. And it might be worth less, but it won't be worth the same amount tomorrow that it is today. And that's true, especially when we start talking larger sums of money, such as the amounts that have to be committed to projects. Right? So when we have to reduce the time of some critical activity, that almost certainly incurs extra direct cost. So our cost time solutions, we're looking at reducing or crashing, they call it, the activities on the critical path so we can shorten overall duration of the project. Right? We're not going to be worried about things that are off the critical path as far as shortening their duration necessarily, because it's pointless. We've already got slack there, right? It's always the critical path we have to attack. All right, so we might have these 6 reasons, and there could be even more. Time to market pressure. We can't put the product on the market on 4th of July weekend. We have to get it started sooner, and so now your project end date has to be June 6th, so that we can start getting that product out and marketing and advertising it, so that by 4th of July we've got good word of mouth. We might have a delay that we had not anticipated. Our research lab burns down, and so we can't do our testing when we expect to do it, or some similar thing. Something that maybe it was in our risk matrix and maybe it wasn't in our risk matrix, but now we have this problem that we may have foreseen a little bit, or we didn't really see it happening in this way, or whatever. We might have an incentive contract. Very often, there will be a bonus if we can finish early, right? And the boss may be really pushing us on that one. Come on, man, we can make an extra $500,000 if we get this done 2 weeks sooner. Again, we might have an imposed deadline where we have a contract commitment. They just need to shorten the time period for some other reason. We might have a problem because the overhead is really killing us on this project in a way that we hadn't anticipated. Or it could be public goodwill cost. A project that I go back to and I think a lot about in this regard is the Tylenol poison scare of the 1970s. I can't remember if I talked to you all about this before. In the 1970s, in I think it was Chicago, some guy bought a bunch of bottles of Tylenol, and he took the cap off and he put poison that looked just like Tylenol capsules in the bottles, and he sealed them back up and he smuggled them back and he put them in the drugstore, right? And so a couple of people died, and they traced it back to the Tylenol, and all of a sudden Tylenol is everybody's like, Tylenol, oh my God, it's poison. Now the company that makes Tylenol reacted very smartly. They said to their distributors and their retailers, pull all the Tylenol off the shelf. We're throwing it all away. And that's when the safe caps and things started getting put on aspirin and Tylenol ibuprofen and everything that we do now, right? You buy a tube of toothpaste, that box is glued down so that you cannot open it without destroying the integrity of the box, so that you know that nobody has taken that toothpaste and put poison in it. Right? So Tylenol, and think about it, that company spent millions of dollars, probably hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. But the public's trust in the brand was very, very important. And by doing all of that and letting the public see and being transparent, public goodwill cost, right? Not to mention, they wrote all of that off on their taxes the next year. So overall, they didn't get hurt that bad. Now, let me contrast that with what Toyota did when they had the runaway acceleration problem. Toyota kind of poo-pooed the problem and said, oh, these are just old people that don't know to take their foot off the gas and put it on the brake. That could have been a disaster for Toyota. But luckily, they got away with it because they found out a couple of things that were happening. One was sometimes the rug on the driver's side would slip up there and interfere with the operation of the brake pedal. And the other was that sometimes the cable from the accelerator would get stuck, right? So they were able to fix that. Tylen, were you going to ask something?
No.
That's too bad. I was hoping you were. All right, and the last reason that they have listed here, we might need to move resources to other projects. Maybe we've been using the resources longer than we thought we would, or maybe the company's just got a lot of projects going on, and it's kind of crucial that we get everything done as quickly as possible. Right? But there could be other reasons than these that we need to have an earlier end to a project. Right? Sometimes that'll just be vanity. The CEO is really hot to trot to bring out the new product. Right? And he's just like dancing around like he's going to pee his pants. About the whole thing. All right, so we've got different options when we need to accelerate a project. If our resources aren't constrained, oh man, have we got some ways to go. We can put more resources on. We can outsource part or even all of the work. We can schedule overtime. Establishing a core project team, well, actually, hopefully we've already got a core project team. But I think maybe that goes with adding resources. And then there's the do it twice method. Do it fast and then do it correctly. You've probably all heard the old saying, I can do it fast but then we'll have to do it over, something like that.
It's a saying?
Well, are you doubting the existence of sayings or of that particular one?
Of that particular one.
There's some different ways that it's said, like, sometimes it's said, we can do it right or we can do it over. But look, sometimes we just want a quick and dirty result, right? Often this is early in the project. We'll do some little experiments to make sure that what we're trying to do is going to work. Right? But sometimes we've been moving forward methodically, and now we need to go faster. And so we do it quick and dirty. We learn the lessons from that, and then we do it over the correct way. Can't believe you don't believe in sayings.
Not that one in particular.
Okay. Now, of course, we might be in the situation that resources are constrained, right? Well, improving the project team efficiency, if the efficiency is low, that could explain why it's taken us so long. We can fast track, in other words, give the project priority over other projects that may be going on. We can attack the critical chain, the critical path. We can reduce the project scope. Say, you know what? We want to do all this stuff in this project, but let's just lop off these couple of things that are kind of complicated and are really slowing us down. Or we could compromise quality. Now, in a real world situation, we may run into a situation where we have both of these situations on different parts of the project, right? We may have part of the project where we've got plenty of resources and we can throw more at it. But other parts, the resources are constrained. We don't have more resources that we can use. All right, so first of all, we've got to know what our costs are when we're reducing project time. Okay, and ordinarily that will be the direct costs of the project. In other words, labor, materials, parts, things of that nature. Right? It won't be overhead, right? They're not going to say, oh, by the way, next week your overhead is going to be doubled. No. Because the cost of the building, the insurance, the maintenance, all of that is going to stay pretty much the same, right? So it's going to be the direct costs that are going to be a problem. All right, so we want to know as much as we can about our direct and indirect costs relating to our project durations, right? If we have to use the testing lab for a certain amount of time, well, that suddenly means that the indirect cost of that overhead may be being charged to our project as long as we're using that. And if we could shorten the time then some of that indirect cost goes away. All right, we're going to look at our critical activities, and we're going to see what is the lowest direct cost activity that we can use to shorten our project duration, right? So maybe we've got one part of the project, it's on the critical path, and you know what? It just doesn't cost that much in labor, materials, parts, whatever. And we could say, maybe we can break loose some more resources to throw at that and get that shortened, and that gives us the time we need, or part of the time we need. So we want to know what the total costs are for specific durations of time, and then what is the benefit of reducing the project time, right? So we may say, you know what, it'll cost us $10,000 more to shorten this part of the project, but after that, any other part of the project is a minimum of $30,000 to shorten it. Let's go for the 10,000. All right, so project indirect costs, we've already talked about that a bit. So they can't necessarily be associated with a particular work package, a particular activity, etc. Right? So that would be like supervision, administration, consultants, interest on the money we may have borrowed to do the project. We can't necessarily eliminate any of those, right? You can't fire the boss as much as we would like to at times. But there also might be costs that are increasing with time, right? If we can use the test lab for 2 weeks instead of a month, that halves the cost of that indirect cost. And then, of course, we have our project direct costs, right? So again, labor, materials, equipment, subcontractors, these can be assigned specifically to work packages or activities, right? So we've got 10 people working on the marketing, and we need to get that done faster. Okay, well, will 15 people reduce that time? 20 people? I mean, there's a point at which everyone's just going to be tripping over everyone else. But a lot of times, adding some people may help. So when we crash or shorten the duration of these activities, it is going to increase our direct costs. Bloody hell. I was so sure that we would get through this entire chapter's presentation today. But instead, all right, so 9, 8. Instead, I'm going to call it quits here. Are there any more questions before our happy band, our brave band of brothers and sisters breaks up today. All right, so next time we'll resume talking about reducing project duration, and we'll do some sample problems in the book. Assuming that I go faster, possibly. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
there.
We will see you on Thursday.
Can hardly wait.